To preface, I've been dabbling with psychedelics since early 2010, when I started eating mushrooms at around 3.5 grams each time. Mid 2010, I got my first dose of LSD, which blew my perception of everything wide open. Around that time, I had been eating mushrooms on a regular basis as well. I went to my first music festivals and was dabbling with mushrooms and LSD a lot more often, though mostly mushrooms because this was around the same time that research chemicals took over almost indefinitely on paper. By 2012, I tripped at least 80 times, never really going higher or lower in dosages, getting satisfying experiences from everything each time. I developed a mushroom allergy that only happens with psychedelic mushrooms in 2012 that resulted in me depending almost exclusively on LSD that was hard to get. In 2013, now I've been able to get countless doses and have begun to dabble with heavier and heavier doses due to finding extreme levels of comfort in the headspace. On to the big one. The comfort level I described above has crept its way from my psychedelic state to my sober state, and I started doing things about it earlier this year, starting with my weight and fitness. 2 weeks ago, I went to a music festival called Funkberry in Eureka Springs. I have made friends with people who host it and was asked to come out and give a hand getting the property ready and had gotten a free ticket to show for it. I hadn't planned to go, but my work schedule happened to line up and I couldn't say no to a free party in the woods. 2 weeks before the festival, we had the opportunity to see an incredible band at Crystal Bridge's Museum of American Art. A local supply of LSD had been easy coming and very good, so there was no way in hell I was going to miss out on dosing in an art museum. I loved acid and had decided I was going to double dose it at Funkberry and see where it could go. I get out to Funkberry and end up camped between a bunch of my friends. They have accrued some strong connections on the road. On the other side of us are GDF and a few kids with Silk Road accounts. We found out 10 hours into the festival that the amount of good stuff out there was intimidating the people who'd brought bunk gear. Word got around fast about the only kid selling bad drugs. He was cutting MDA with methadone and not telling anyone. He got shut down real quick. Friday afternoon comes around. I ate a small amount of MDA, then head into town to get a check cashed and buy booze. I finally get back around 3 p.m. Now, if you're still listening to my long-winded tale, this is where it all begins. 5 p.m. is when the bus came by. I got on, and then it all began. I sit down with my buddy who goes by NB and our new friend K. Before I went to town, I told NB that I intended to take 2 hits of the acid I'd brought, and he asked me why such a low dose. I explained to him why I wanted to take it and described my comfort level with that amount of L, and he challenged me, in a positive way, to step out of my comfort zone. The set and setting was just right, as he never doses large amounts in places he's not sure about or with people he's not cool with. He, being significantly older and much more acquainted with deep trips, had convinced me to go all in with him, almost dose for dose. Here I'll start breaking it down into times and amounts eaten to give everyone an idea of just what I went into. 5 p.m., I trade a friend 1 hit of the 2 I brought for one of his. NB has a couple of sheets and tells me and Kay to stop and not eat any yet. He cuts off a sliver for each of us, not quite a whole strip, about 5 to 7 doses. We toast the slivers like the 3 musketeers and stick them in our mouths. Then we begin to eat the feast of various papers in our hands, all flavorless and stiff as fucking boards. Some just ripped off a sheet, no specific amount. 5:15 p.m. A friend from a neighboring camp comes over and sees us chewing on paper and rips off a giant chunk for me off his sheet. I protest and ask if it's cool if I split it. Now, some hippies bestow an amount they feel you deserve just for you, and sometimes it's a lot. He sarcastically responds, I don't give a fuck. You're a grown ass man. That phrase becomes a catchphrase for all of us all night. I split the massive chunk with another friend, and we add that to the wads in our mouths. Around 5:30 p.m., it's starting to come on strong. I've never eaten this much paper. My whole body is vibrating, and I'm quickly realizing what Hunter S. Thompson and other psychonauts have described as the fear. 5:45 p.m. NB locks his backpack away, and I take heed and lock my wallet and valuables up. Shit's about to get confusing. 6:30 p.m. I'm having trouble discerning body language and facial expressions as everything starts fractaling off into itself into the nether. The thought loops that normally hit around peak are starting already. I get offered some ecstasy. Dude offers to front me the E cause he's my crew's friend and camped next door. I tell him, I don't fuck around like that. He responds, I fuck around like that. I tell him there's no fucking way, as high as I already am, that I'm letting him front me anything, and get stuck in a loop talking to him cause he's cool as fuck and really hard to read, and it was breaking my mind trying to read his face. Around 7 p.m., I break the thought loop, reminding him I owe him money that he still doesn't care about. I rush over to the tent before I forget again. I get into it and forget what I'm doing. Okay, got it. Pulled $10 out of the wallet and shoved it back into the lockbox. Hand him his money and off we go. I didn't eat the E then, but really should have. It probably would have made the next part of the night a lot easier. 7:30 p.m. We headed to the main stage as it's getting dusky and the fire performers are setting to start soon. I'm having a blast giggling and saying things to people who pass me and yelling nonsense at strangers who are probably as high as me. NB has disappeared like he does. He likes to prank when he's high. He's the closest thing to a real merry prankster living in my state. 8 p.m. I have a conversation with a friend who just gobbled up 30 hits. I realize this is a super safe space and it calms my nerves a little. A random hippie starts hanging out with me. He goes and gets himself a margarita from one of the vendors and hands it to me and tells me to drink as much as I want. It's like sweet tangy nectar of the gods. I am sated. I go back to the fire performer ring and sit by my buddies. 9 p.m. Normally this long on the ground and I'm uncomfortable, but I'm experiencing the most intense, comfortably numb experience of my life. The band Yo Mama's Big Fat Booty is just kind of buzzing in the back of my consciousness as I roll back and forth between laying on my side and sitting on my butt with my body folded over itself. I'm having both a good time and an incredibly powerful one. I'd kind of gotten uncomfortable in my head and was having a lot of trouble with loops and not really being able or wanting to talk. I'm pretty beat from not sleeping the night before, and this experience is getting a bit too real. I'm getting visuals like I've never had in my life, and my mind is complete mush, so it's all happening in front of me like a child that can't blink. You know that feeling everyone describes as the cosmic giggle? I've felt it many times on low doses, but never like this. I'm not only stuck in the giggle, but it's giggling back at me. People describe feeling as though they're in the breadth of the universe. You know, where everything slows to a crawl like a roller coaster climbing, then throws itself down into intensity? Like every trippy cartoon ever tried to display? This is what I'm feeling more than anything at this point. Like I'm riding waves of the incomprehensible with little way to describe what I'm seeing or feeling other than woof. Another catchphrase some friend embedded in my psyche. When you're too fucked up to have anything of substance to say, just say woof. I'm on my knees to the psychedelic state. 9:30 p.m. I get really interested in the lowdown on the grass, and it helps me pull out as I watch the grass grow over my friends' heads, and I'm laughing and back in it for the haul. 9:45-ish. NB has been creeping in the corner of my eyesight for the last hour, looking mischievous as fuck, and he creeps up on me and Kay, who have been anchored to a friend by the fire ring for the last eternity. The arrival of NB brightens our spirits greatly. Not that we were low, just going through some serious psychedelic state. At this moment, all three of us inhale deeply and say, "Holy shit." We all just finally got spit back out by the jaws of psychedelia who had been gnawing on us for a while. Reborn doesn't even begin to describe the feeling. It was like my master had sat on my chest and finally stood up. We all experienced this in tandem. I've experienced the moments of clarity on some dirtier acid that would take you up and out of reality, then throw you back down into it after 30 minutes. It's not a fun coaster. This was more like being shot out of a rocket and hitting terminal velocity. We'd finally hit terminal velocity. The plateau. 10:30 p.m. I try to go back to camp for a minute, but get completely lost in the now unfamiliar campgrounds, and so I go back to where I came from and hang out there for a while longer. Visuals aren't blowing my mind anymore. Instead, now I'm navigating the headspace and the visual stimulation with a lot more comfort and confidence. 11 p.m. I finally decide it's time to try again, and I make it this time. Huzzah! But wait. Shit! Here comes the first huge storm of our weekend. 11:30 p.m. I'm now stuck at a base camp that's filling with more people, as our engineering campmate had erected us a tarp structure that looked akin to a massive pagoda, and it stayed relatively dry and clean in there all weekend, so passerby would take refuge. People decided to stay and start partying. 12:30-ish. Said engineer asks me for help with something, so I stand up and put my jacket down in the chair next to me. The confusion from the come up had come back, but I had a mission, so I helped him and sat back down. Now, I'd been fiddling with getting my hat out of my jacket for an hour or so, and it had become my hand crutch for when I couldn't handle all the people. Now I don't have it, and it hits me. I suddenly get cold from realizing my jacket isn't available anymore. My mind is mush, and this isn't helping. 12:45 a.m. My now friend, but worst nightmare, is banging away on his glockenspiel, despite multiple both quiet mumbly and loud protests to stop long enough for me to concentrate on finding my jacket. I freak out on him and threaten to throw the glockenspiel in the rain. I would never actually do it, even in this state. I was just trying to get the gravity through to him. Other friends of his that aren't as close to me don't realize I don't ever freak like that unless I'm really not happy or going through some shit. A couple come to my side and help me look, but the kid still won't stop his banging. 1 a.m. I've all but lost my shit now. I'm crying and babbling incoherently and rocking back and forth. A couple friends have done all they can to help, and it dawns on all of us. Only one person hasn't stood up since this all began. John, who's playing his guitar. We ask him to stand up briefly. Sure as fucking shit, there's the jacket. Now I'm comfortable and warm and back into the party, but I'm getting lectured by unfamiliar faces about it's about what you put out in the world and blah blah blah. This could have been positive if you had handled it more politely or more calmly, blah blah blah. One friend steps in and points to the kid who wouldn't stop playing and reminds him that we're all friends here, and if he had done what his friend asked, none of the issues would have persisted. I didn't want anyone lectured, so I called him off. 1:30 a.m. NB was the one who stood up for me, and now he's offering me a warm bed, a muscle relaxer, and the understanding of time and experience that I can't even begin to explain how grateful I am. I pass out in his tent and all is well. I hope everyone enjoyed this story. I learned a lot through it. It forced my mindset towards getting the fuck out of my comfort zone. I plan to go back to that headspace again this weekend, albeit a bit more manageably than last time.